Hello, my name is Andy Heath, and in December 2012 I posted a video teaching you how to write a short story in 1 hour. I've had a lot of positive feedback on that video, but one thing several people asked for was an abbreviated version, as that video was an hour long. This video is a shortened version of the previous one, and in it I'll cover the highlights of how to write a short story in 1 hour, especially giving attention to idea generation. I'll also give a simple example of the process I go through to write a short story and plan it. Keep in mind, this is only an example, and I use it to illustrate how to plan a short story, not to give an example of a planned-out literary masterpiece. Planning is essential to writing a short story. I would never sit down to write a short story without some kind of rough outline that tells me where the story is going. So the first phase of writing a short story is actually a pre-writing exercise which outlines the 6 elements involved in a short story. Here are the 6 elements so you can keep them in mind during this video. They are the character, the problem the character can live with, the motivation to solve the problem, the action the character takes to solve the problem, the result of the character's action, and the change the character undertakes because of that action. When I sit down to write a short story, I start with the character in mind, and nothing else. Do I want to write about a goth teenager, a wealthy mother of 3 children, a struggling attorney, a teenage football star, a heroin addict? I simply start by writing down who the main character is, and just some general information about that character. Keep in mind that most short stories focus on one single character, even if there are multiple characters in that story. In other words, if you read a short story, there may be 3 characters in that story, but you should be able to tell me who the main character is. Who was the story about? When you write short stories, keep that in mind. No matter how many characters come up, you want your readers to be able to identify with one of them for the most part. The second thing I do in planning a short story is write down the problem that the main character is having. It is usually a problem the character has had for a long time, and something the character has no immediate need to solve. For example, if I'm writing about a heroin addict, the obvious problem is that the character could have is that he has a heroin addiction. He's probably not thrilled to be a heroin addict, but he also may not have any immediate motivation to solve that problem. The third thing I do is write down what motivation the character finally has to solve the problem. If we're talking about someone who has a heroin addiction, what motivates them to try to recover from that? I may decide that the main character discovers he has a 5-year-old daughter he never knew about, which of course means I need to set up how he finds out about his daughter from the beginning of the story. I might say that he hasn't heard from his mother in years, and all of a sudden she calls him one day. He doesn't know why she's calling, and when he presses her for the reason, she tells him that she found out about his daughter. At this point, the character has a motivation to solve his heroin addiction. He has a daughter that he never knew about and wants to be close to, and so he needs to be clean and sober in order to be a successful father. So what does he do? The fourth thing I write down is the action the character takes to solve his problem. If he has a heroin addiction, and he knows now that he has a 5-year-old daughter that he wants a relationship with, what's he going to do to solve his heroin problem? Does he go into treatment? Does he try to solve it on his own? In this case, I may say he throws away all his heroin and his needles and deletes his dealer's number. Then he checks himself into treatment. So that's the action he takes. But what's the result? Let's say after 30 days in treatment he feels he's successfully recovered, and maybe continues going to 12-step meetings to keep his recovery, using his daughter as motivation for his efforts. After he gets out of treatment, he goes and sees his daughter, but the mother of the child doesn't allow him to see her. That depresses him, and he goes back to using drugs. Or, on a happier note, perhaps I could say his newfound recovery has motivated him to try to find another relationship and have another child and a family, creating an ironic ending. After we know the result, we have to see how the character changes. In this case, he gave up drugs, but he also found confidence that he could do great things and the confidence that he is capable of a family relationship with a spouse and children. With that in mind, the story could end. Let's recap. Thus, we started with a character, a heroin addict. His problem was his heroin addiction. His motivation was finding out that he had a daughter, and that's what motivated him to solve the problem. The action he took to solve the problem was going to treatment. The result was that he got clean and sober, but he did not get to have a relationship with his daughter. The change he underwent as a result of going through this story and through the actions of the story was a newfound confidence in his ability to have relationships. Those are the steps to writing a good short story. Let's keep in mind a few final thoughts. First, anytime a character takes an action, that character should have a very good reason to do so. Always make sure your characters act appropriately for who they are, unless they have a very good reason to do something different. Second, set up every event in the story. If the character is surprised to hear from his mother, make sure that you show in some way that the character would be surprised to hear from his mother, maybe by saying that he forgot to call her on Mother's Day, or something to that effect. Third, anytime you open something up, you must close it. In other words, if you have any kind of conflict in the story, you must resolve it prior to ending the story. This is very important. Even if the resolution is that the conflict continues, that's still a resolution. Make it intentional and use sound judgment. So that's the gist of how to write a short story, using the planning phase for writing the manuscript. Once you've outlined the story, you'll have no trouble writing it. I hope this video was helpful for those of you who don't have time to go through my whole video on how to write a short story in 1 hour. If you'd like to read some of my work, you can visit my blog at thefictionsite.com, or you can read my collection of short stories called Sacrilege, available on Amazon Kindle. You can search for Sacrilege and my name, Andrew Heath, and that will take you to this page that you can actually download the collection. This is Andy Heath signing off. Have a very nice day.